Okay, item F, discuss and consider the first reading of an ordinance amending the City of New Braunfels, Texas Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2, Section 2-39, to adjust the procedures for citizens' comments during city council meetings to conduct the business of the city during council meetings more efficiently. Mr. Camerino, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. We have been discussing strategies on conducting the business of the city council during city council meetings much more efficiently. In fact, we've done those at two previous occasions. At a council meeting on November the 14th, we provided you with a presentation, as well as December the 12th, we provided much of the same information, but with some additional information that the council had requested at the November 14th meeting, particularly around some additional information that you wanted us to include in a chart, which I will present to you all this evening for a second time. Based on the presentations, the council provided direction to staff with regards to moving forward on implementing the following initiatives. First being a limitation on presentations by outside organizations, and have a slide on each one of these. A revision on citizens communication time. The implementation of a speaker registration form, and then revising the amount of time allotted for public hearings for and against. Presentation limit, there's no formal action that's required by council because this is not included in any ordinance, but what was presented to you were two options for limiting the presentation by outside organizations to setting a maximum limit of slides per presentation or a maximum time, possibly up to 10 minutes. Staff recommends or prefers the limitation of time rather than slides, because certainly someone can get through a lot of slides in 10 minutes. Second, citizens communication time. We spent a lot of time here in researching what other cities do, particularly with what's the maximum time allowed per speaker, and do they require a registration or speaker registrations. We surveyed 20 cities, and I would consider 9 of these cities that are on this list as being surrounding cities. So that's cities such as Austin, Cedar Park, Georgetown, Pflugerville, Round Rock, San Antonio, San Marcos, Church, and Seguin. And of those 20 cities, only one of those allows for 5 minutes, and that's the city of Seguin. The other 19, or 95% of those 20 cities, then allow 3 minutes per speaker. So standard practice is 3 minutes per speaker. Also, only 2 of the cities that are on this list require speaker registration. Do not require speaker registration. That's the city of Pflugerville and the city of Seguin. What had been proposed to the city council was revising the time that citizens speak from 5 to 3 minutes, and actually revising that time does allow for more speakers to address the city council. What's proposed in the ordinance, some language that's proposed in the ordinance, is that the mayor does have discretion to allow a speaker more time or to extend the overall time limit in an equitable manner. Something that's not on this slide, but we've discussed several times, is about electronic file submissions. In fact, even this meeting, we had several speakers that wanted to put something up on the document cam. What we have been looking at is the ability for our citizens to be able to submit things to us electronically so that we can have those ready to bring them up when they are coming up to speak. And so if citizens want to utilize pictures, documents, or other things to support their comments, they would need to submit those electronically no later than 2 hours prior to the meeting. That would give our IT department time to be able to review those electronic files, so that to ensure that there are no viruses on those files that are submitted. And if any of these proposals are actually implemented, we would implement that at the same time as some of these others. Speaker registration form. This also would require an amendment to the ordinance. And so, as you saw in the previous chart, all but 2 of the 20 cities that we surveyed do not require it. The others do. And so there's a number of different formats that they actually implement that in. The format or the structure that we would propose, and again, to help create some efficiency for the public wishing to address the council, would be that the speaker would complete the registration form. the city secretary's office would then assist the mayor in grouping those speakers by subject or agenda item. And then the mayor would call upon those wishing to address the city council. That could really be, a lot more efficient than folks kind of waiting for who's next. Should I go up next? The mayor could actually call them up and have some speakers ready. And then the speakers would then be allowed to speak for 5 minutes. And again, the speaker registration form will add structure to public comments. And something really important, and we've heard this time and time again, there are folks that are concerned about providing their address at the podium, okay? The speaker registration form, they would then eliminate the need for that. They could just tell us whether they live within the city limits. If they know their council district, they would put that down, or if they live in the ETJ. So that would eliminate the need for them to have to do that. Right after my presentation, our IT director, Tony Gonzalez, will actually give you a demonstration of what that will look like. Staff has been working very hard on developing the process, the form by which we could implement if the council so chooses to do that. For public hearings, what's proposed is to revise the time allotted per side, for and against on public hearings from 30 minutes to 20 minutes. And when you run the math, for a total of 40 minutes, okay, currently, that's our current structure. When you run the math, what's proposed is 20, 24, 20 against for a total of 40. When you run the math on what's currently in place, and assuming that all the speakers take all the 5 minutes that are allotted to them currently, then we would have 6 speakers for a 30-minute time period, for or against. Under 20 minutes, assuming that each of the speakers take all 3 minutes that's allotted, then we would have 6 speakers, plus that would leave an additional 2 minutes, or spare 2 minutes for another speaker to be able to come up and address the city council. Again, what's proposed in the ordinance is that the mayor would have the discretion to allow a speaker more time or to extend the overall time limits in an equitable manner. What you have on your agenda tonight is the first reading of the proposed amendments to our current ordinance. If it passes tonight on first reading, the second reading would be at the first meeting in February the 13th. And then we would provide sort of a procedural grace period. That provides the citizens with an educational period to learn these new procedures. But the mayor would still reserve the right to exercise discretion and enforcement from the date of implementation through whatever period the council sets, whether that's 2 months, 4 months, or what we have included in the agenda packet, say up through September. Again, that really gives the citizens plus the city council some time to get used to the new processes and procedures. With that, I want to ask Tony to go ahead and run the beautiful bean footage and run the demonstration for the city council.
All righty, thanks, Robert. This is the form that we're proposing that we use. It's a very simple form here. We will make this available on the website, several different links there. We can make it available as soon as we approve this. So just the example here would be you'd put your first and last name. Here is where you would select your residential status so that you all can get the feedback that you need about constituents, et cetera. And if they want to provide a street address to help you specifically know which district they live in, they can do that. You'll notice this does not have a red asterisk beside it, so it's not required, it's optional. And then they would choose what council agenda date. We pre-populated this already with all the scheduled council agendas or meetings for the rest of the year, but we could add in any special meetings that we add, workshops, et cetera. We would do that as soon as they were decided upon. So once you pick a date, then you tell us which section of the agenda do you want to speak on. If you want to speak on citizen comments, we do ask that they give us a topic so that we can group similar, or folks who want to speak on similar topics together. If they choose a consent agenda item, we do have the note here that if you ask to speak on a consent agenda item, that item would have to be pulled, but you would have to be present. And then down here, they would simply choose which consent item they were choosing. Or if the speaker would choose an individual item, they could then choose the individual item that they would like to speak on. This is where, when Robert was talking about submission of electronic files, they could add those files here and submit it with their speaker registration. So all they have to do is hit submit. you'll notice that the form reloads automatically. So especially if you're at home or you're here and it's about to be council meeting, if you want to speak on more than one topic, you could simply fill out the form on the second topic, and we put that note over here on the left as well. So tried to incorporate all of your feedback into what you'd like to see, and worked with city secretary, CMO staff, legal, to make this as simple as we could, but yet get what we need to help you organize this. So happy to answer any questions.
I have a quick question. So for those people who don't have ready access to a computer or need assistance, would we have a computer here where they can do that, or would we be able to?
That would be the plan, yes, sir. We'd have a couple of devices out in the hallway. We've even talked today about creating a QR code, even for those folks who have a computer but maybe didn't see this, and as they showed up, they're like, oh, this is new. If we had a QR code posted outside in the lobby, they could scan that with their phone and register right there. This will work on a mobile device as well, just real quick.
Fantastic, thank you.
We would also have staff available to be able to assist initially to help folks fill out the speaker registration form.
Tony, I think this is great, the way this is set up. I just have one question, and I want to make it clear, I don't want this to slow down the process of the applicant, so I don't want to think that, but I frequently frequently is too strong of a word, but do run into folks that don't realize because they have a New Braunfels address that they're not a city resident like that. So if we could put some directional, something, not to slow down their process and keep them from speaking at all, but maybe something like we have the link on the GIS where you can put your address and look for district, not to report the address to us, but where they can put it in just to see their district or whatever, or maybe some verbiage that explains what the ETJ is. I know people that come here regularly understand that, but frequently I run into folks who are like, hey, well, will the city do this for us? And I looked there, I said, ma'am or sir, you're not in the city limits of New Braunfels, but they will have a New Braunfels address, right? So if there's anything we can do informationally, not to slow this down, but to explain a little bit more what that is for some folks that may not be aware of it.
I agree, because there's a lot of people that live in Barramindi that think they live in the city limits of New Braunfels, and they don't. Especially, I mean, the elementary's not in our city limits, a bunch of the houses aren't. So to have a link like that to where they could quickly refer to it, type it in, oh, I'm not, and then go back, it would be beneficial.
We can certainly work on that and present to y'all what we work up there.
And I have a quick question too. On city council days like today, what would be the cutoff time for them to be able to submit this? Would they be able to come in at 6 o'clock if there's an item F way down the line? Would they be able to register then, or is there going to be a cutoff?
So we've talked about that, and there needs to be time for IT to work to be able to, that report be generated and then provided to the city secretary's office and then handed over to the mayor. So it can't be 6 p.m. Let's say the meeting starts at 6 p.m. It can't be 6 p.m. There's got to be a cutoff sometime before that to be able to allow for that report to be generated, handed to the mayor, and have a discussion about grouping and whatnot.
So we haven't decided that yet. And so there will be no caveat, someone coming in off the street and saying, hey, I want to speak on this, or sit in the audience if something rattles their brain on a different item. Will they be able to speak on that even though they didn't register?
Yes, and that leads to that grace period that I was referring to earlier, sort of that educational grace period, so that, because this is going to be new to the council, new to our community, so that the council and the community can then learn about these procedures as we go along. So I think that grace period is going to be, that educational grace period is going to be important as we get to, to a point to actually finally implement these changes. And I know that, and Tony and Gail, I know that we've had conversation about what that cutoff period is, and I know that we've had some conversation. I don't know if you can refresh my memory as to, did we land on a certain time?
Because this is electronic, we could really cut it off, I mean, even as late as 5 or 10 minutes before the meeting started, because the report is automatically generated within this, and it's just a matter of either having that available for the mayor or the mayor pro tem, whoever is presiding, to either, if we have an iPad or something up there where that's all that's on there, so you can see it. All you have to do is refresh it right before the meeting starts. I mean, it could be that late. I think it would be problematic, though, to do it during the meeting. If somebody decided, oh, now I want to speak on this item, that becomes a little difficult because I just don't know how functional that is for the presiding officer to constantly refresh that list and look at it, right? So a definitive cutoff time would certainly be suggested.
I would be cautious on how close we do to the meeting on that cutoff, because we have a popular item that has several people that are trying to submit it or whatnot. They submit something, and is there anything that says it's rejected because that cap has already been made, or you have time, you've submitted it, but we don't have time to review it or whatnot? This year, we've been a lot of topics that have filled our room, and the other one, if you do it 10 minutes prior, you're not really giving city staff who's working with us in the executive session enough time to give these people the due diligence for what they've submitted.
Filling out one of the speaker registration forms does not guarantee that you'll actually get to speak to the council, because currently we do have a certain amount of time allotted for those that are for and against. Currently is 30 and 30, so 60 minutes. So unless, again, the ordinance does provide some discretion for the mayor and the council to extend that amount of time, if the council so chooses to be able to extend that.
Tony, there's a drop down of, citizen comments. The thing that I struggle with is that while somebody may have been here for another agenda item, like you said, they may say, well, I've got something to say. I've got something to say once they're already in these chambers. And so my concern is how do we get to them, and how is that handled logistically? And then Ms. Wilkinson, it'll be in order of how those speaker registration forms were turned in? Okay.
I mean, he brings up a good point. If somebody doesn't know if they're going to speak on every topic, they're going to fill it out for every topic, and then they may take up a spot for somebody else. So when they come up and say, you know what, I don't feel like I need to talk on it today, and then move it to the next person, that's just kind of slowing down the process. So I agree, we need to come up with some sort of way of a person coming here that there may be some extra time for them to talk, be able to have that opportunity to talk.
I think we should allow people to talk if they come up spontaneously. We just give priority to the people who have filled out a form, so that, if you filled out a form, you get to talk first, and if there's still time left over, if anybody else wants to talk, we just let them talk. That way we don't exclude anybody who.
Yeah, I agree. I think citizen communication, we can speak for 3 hours if we've got enough citizens in here. So we definitely want to cut them off. And so, I agree. We definitely want to be able to accommodate them for sure. And it's anything. You see your friends get up and talk about it. Well, in the heat of the moment, spontaneously, you get the nerve to do it if you're not used to speaking in public. So I just want to work around that and not allow that to be a hindrance.
I think another good call out is that the mayor has the flexibility to extend time. So, we're going to have hot button issues where more than, 20 minutes of discussion is warranted. And the mayor has an opportunity to say, you know what, we're going to extend this to 40 minutes or whatever is reasonable. So, this gives us some flexibility. It's not like we're stuck with this only.
Yeah. It adds structure, but at the same time provides some flexibility.
And most of the items that I think Councilmember Hurta is talking about would be ones that someone might have submitted some details that they wanted presented up on. So those items would obviously need to be vetted ahead of time to make sure that there's nothing that's going to crash the system and all that. After all, we've had people come and complain about the fact that they don't like our squares on the table. And so I think this provides an opportunity for people to get their submission in if they've got a letter that they want us to see or that they want to be put on here. I also think that the opportunity for people to, if they come, and again, like Councilmember Hurta said, if there's a topic and there's 10 people that have registered to speak during citizens' comments, and that topic is, maybe it's different items that they want to talk about that are not on that agenda, and it may pique the interest of someone else that wants to say something, then we're flexible enough to be able to add to that list on the spot. It's not something that says, well, you have to wait till the next meeting. That's not where we're going with this. And I appreciate the work that you guys have done in thinking this out. But then again, there's always going to be that, and I like the warm-up period too. I think that's something that we need to be fair with and make sure everybody understands so that in 3-4 months, whenever it happens, then we're ready to go.
And like anything else, as we go along in implementation, if we learn things that we need to possibly adjust to, then we can do that as well.
Tony, real quick, there can be a cutoff for submitting files? An hour, 2 hours, just arbitrary number. Can there be a second, or your software able to do a second where you're not submitting any files, but you want to talk to that cutoff to be 10 minutes prior? So there's, you know where I'm going?
Let me turn that on. I do. So the form would actually not cut off. It wouldn't prevent you from submitting something after an arbitrary cutoff time.
Okay.
But what will happen here, I can show you a little bit behind here. So I made some dummy entries here. But as you can see on this column right here, we can see when somebody submitted it, right? This is an automatic entry. Nobody can fudge this. It's system generated. So we would just use this. And if it was after a certain time, then we would not call on those folks unless there was extra time and the mayor so chose to use that discretion.
Okay, so there's no way that we could stop a resident from submitting anything. Good, okay. Then you answered my question. Thank
But what we wouldn't do is to upload a file that has not yet been scanned, because that's the last thing that we want to do is to upload a file that has not yet been scanned for any viruses and potentially then put our systems at risk.
So Tony, I apologize for a scope creep, but could we also, and maybe this is the second iteration of this form, but could we also give residents an opportunity to check a box that say they don't wish to speak, but they do want to give us feedback? And that way people at home can, participate by checking the I don't want to speak, but they want to put in input, and then, the council members would get a feedback, even if it was after the meeting or whatever. I would still like the opportunity to get feedback. I think I would.
So I'll give you a great IT guy answer here. Theoretically, yes.
Okay,
But pretty confident that yes, we could do that.
maybe something we could explore for the second iteration of this form.
I think one thing that I want to caution and concerns me is that specifically with this item, we make the change in that we're worse off, right? I mean, we bogged down the process in what we were thinking we were streamlining it and thinking we were trying to do a good thing. So that's what I would just caution, just let's not make it worse by tinkering with it.
And I would like to caveat off of him, if we do 3 minutes with 20 minutes, that's only 6 speakers with 2 minutes, as you said, left over.
Right.
But if it's 3 minutes with 30 minutes, that's 10 speakers. I'd rather keep the 30 minutes for and against and use the 3 minutes, because there's a possibility you won't have 10 speakers, you might only have 6, so you're back to 20 minutes anyway.
That's a policy issue for the council to
I
discuss.
would-
We were given direction at 20, so.
I would say that I would agree with Councilmember Spradley on that. Not every item is going to go 30 minutes, right? But it gives the opportunity. So in theory, you're providing more citizen engagement if there are enough speakers. At the same time, if there's not enough speakers, because then the reality is 3 minutes, I think, is ample enough time. But I agree, I like the idea. And I know we may have, I don't know if we ever had complete consensus as we gave direction, although on that, because we didn't really do a vote on it. But I like the idea of still 3, but keeping it at 30, so it provides more opportunity. At the same time, there's not that many people want to speak on it. It still saves time, right? Because we're not using the full 30, but the opportunity for constituents to speak is still there, right? And I think I appreciate staff's work. I know I said this already, but on the baseline, that I understand some folks upset about going from 5 to 3 potentially, and it's not that I'm not hearing that. It's just if you look at the baseline cities, we're an anomaly, right? But like Councilmember Spradley said, if we leave it at 30, reduce it to 3, we're actually providing more citizens the opportunity than we currently do right now to participate.
That's correct.
So to me, that's a win-win.
And I would like to speak for myself. We had issues with developers out before I was on city council. I was sitting out here, right? We could only get 6 people to speak in opposition to that project that was going on, right? We had 15 people in the audience, right? I think if we, moved it down to 3 minutes, we would have had more people. Of course, we're all saying the same thing. We don't want this thing in our backyard. But still, we would have had more people other than those 6. So we had to be crafty of who those 6 people were, the good speakers in the group or whatever. So That's just my thoughts.
And I do want to thank staff for working on this. Robert, you and I talked about this way back. And, you know, I mean, just full disclosure, when we're on item N, and it's 11:45 at night, is it getting the same, I'm speaking for myself, is it getting the same focus and attention from me up here as the item A at 7:30? Not, I mean, I'm in bed by then, okay? And so when I come to you and say, man, we need to have a look at what we can do to streamline these meetings, to shorten them to some extent. And I think in the first meeting, I got shut down on this, but was, you know, put presentations on another day, right? Put proclamations on another day. We spent right at 40 minutes on presentations, and that's short for 3 presentations, to be real honest with you. So you could easily eat up an hour and a half on presentations, but I understand my fellow councilman couldn't break away from work another day, or that was a very unpopular thing. So, you know, that was one of the things we talked about, and that was, a lot of that was in passing as we're walking out the door at midnight. So it's the inefficiency of keeping staff here forever, and keeping someone that has an agenda item O here for so long in the night. And I mean, who cares about me? I'll stay here. But it's folks who's, you know, it's their project, it's their dream, you know, that they're trying to get past. And, you know, I think anything we can do to give the full focus of that is beneficial. So, but we couldn't do workshop on another day. I didn't win that one.
Can you or Val speak to the agenda items that are specific to what we have to read and what we have to do with consent? They have to be read. We can't just say, let's vote on consent items A through F tonight and have a motion. That state law, they have to be read. Is that correct?
It's actually the city charter that requires the caption be read out loud in a public meeting. So that's why we can read through the consent agenda captions, but you can't skip that. You can't skip that.
And are there other items that we do
Well,
that?
sure, the zoning is a good example. You know, you see a lot of the public hearing and, you know, those can't be consent. Consent by its definition means that there's not going to be any discussion, there's not going to be public input on those items. And so when it's a required public hearing by state law or local ordinance or both, it has to be on an individual item.
So those are sometimes some of those things that we have to do because that's part of the ordinance or that's
Right.
part of the policy.
The law requires it,
Right.
correct. I think staff has tried to put what they can on consent, anything that's not controversial, anyway.
And as Val mentioned, reading the consent items is a requirement of our charter. Certainly, we could change the charter, but that would require a charter election. It's not something that the council can change unilaterally. It must take an election to do that.
I would like to say I agree with Councilman Herta. If there's things on the, God bless you. You only get one, so don't sneeze twice. If there's a way we could adjust the agenda and move presentations, maybe not so much proclamations, but presentations to another day, because I know, what is it, next Monday, we have another special city council meeting somewhere else. I think that would help also, because it does take an extraordinary amount of time. There's a lot of people that are here just for agenda, whatever number it is coming up, or letter. I think it would be a little bit more streamlined. Maybe we could try that also if we're going forward, just give it a shot, see what that looks like. Thanks.
It certainly didn't have much traction when we first presented the special workshops that we would have presentations and proclamations. And so that's certainly a policy discussion for the council to continue having, if you so choose to do that.
But does that have
Staff
to
would be
be,
available to
does
do
that
that.
have
Be
to
happy
be
to do that.
included into a new ordinance, or is this something we could just try?
Something you can try.
Okay.
Would not require a change to an ordinance.
So presentations aren't included in any ordinance or
No, sir.
charter amendment.
Yeah, we used to have the agenda order from the call to order to the adjournment in the Code of Ordinances, some of you might remember, but that got repealed several years ago, and it's up to, you know, the mayor and the city manager to determine the order of business.
Could we attend presentations by Zoom?
to Val for that one.
Probably one of you, well, we'd have to look at the COVID restrictions. I'm not sure that we can still do that.
Didn't the
But if
governor
you
roll that
can.
back? I thought the governor rolled that back. I mean,
So I'm
it's
not sure.
it's over.
I'm not sure. Normally, even without COVID, there are ways to do that if it's like, you know, a council member that cannot be there, but the majority would always have to be physically present. If there's one of you that's away for whatever reason, can't be here physically, then we've done that over the years before COVID, but it was very, very rare. I think we did it once with a
If
former
we
mayor.
have 2 council meetings a month, and every council meeting has 3 presentations, you could do 1 council meeting special just with 6 presentations. You don't have to be on Monday.
Yeah, we would be happy to do that if the council so chooses to entertain that.
Is my idea getting traction, or is it just this side over here?
I don't know.
I mean, is this happening?
I think.
Don't
there's-
jinx it.
yeah,
Don't jinx
There's pros and cons to both. I think really, I agree with what you're saying to a degree, but I think the challenge is people, since the majority of us in the dais work just trying to get here on that, but maybe we got to look at the data and see how many I perfectly agree, like tonight we had 3 presentations, right? I can think of one night where we had 1 presentation that took 2.5 hours, right? A singular presentation. So I realize they don't all take the same, but maybe we could look at really what we do in an annual cycle, and is there a more efficient way, as Councilmember Herndon mentioned it, right? Maybe it's not every week opposite, but maybe it's once a month, right? There's a presentation, you know, meeting or whatever, and that may not be accurate either. But I mean, it really to take a look at what type of presentations we have. Some are more informative, are there some that could just be PowerPoint slides sent out, right? Most aren't, but are there some that are just really informative, whether they require discussion or whatnot? I mean, but I think you gained a little traction. I'm not sure how much.
Another option to having a workshop on a separate night is to actually have a workshop prior to the regular council meeting. So I think we discussed that. I don't know that that gained any traction just because some folks may not be able to get out earlier than what they typically are able to get out for a 5 o'clock executive session meeting or a 6 o'clock regular council meeting. So that is something that we discussed, but I'm not sure that they gained any
Well,
traction.
I think we
either.
talked at 4, but the challenge is we have executive session at 5, right? So
That's correct.
realistically, they're not going to typically get done before executive session.
So Jason, was your idea to add a 3rd council meeting to the month? Is that?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I would personally be okay with that. I would like to hear workshops or presentations on a separate night, so that we get quickly to the business of people, right? And those presentations, we're not taking action on, correct?
Typically, we do a 2-step process where we'll present the information, get some feedback from council, and then bring that item then back to the council for consideration at another council meeting.
But add an hour where folks can be here, right? Add an hour, 6 to 6, you know, where people can be here to ask questions.
And you need a quorum to have a meeting to have the presentation.
Yes, sir.
And remind us again, a quorum is 5. Any other comments from council? Thank you, Robert. Thank you, team. Tony, everybody for working on this. So this is a public hearing, so we will open it up for public comment. If you have comments to make, if you will, and any handouts you have, make sure you share those with Ms. Wilkinson or Mr. Schwartz afterwards, but state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 5 minutes or less, please.
Hi, my name is Lori Schrank. I live out on Morningside Drive. Bear with me tonight. You know, I debated whether to come here tonight or not, seeing that this morning about 3:30 a.m. my father-in-law passed away. Some are probably wondering why come. He's why I came. See, my father-in-law was from the old German ways. His family immigrated here, and his parents didn't speak English. He told stories about the government, about how the government was. See, well over a decade ago, the city of New Braunfels sent out notices to property owners in our area. The notices were about their properties being taken into the city. The city was allowing property owners to object to this if they had 10 acres or more, which he did. See, he was very upset, and he did not want to take and go speak to the city, and never said anyone to anybody in the family because he was afraid that we would speak out. Later, we found out about all of this. We asked him, why didn't he protest being taken into the city if he didn't want to be there? Mind you, my father-in-law was a strong man. He said that he was afraid to protest it. I asked him why. He said because he was afraid that if he came and he spoke out against it, that the city would come and take his property away. That this was the way the government worked. He said the governments do not want to hear from the people. If you speak out, they take things from you, and that he couldn't risk that. See, that is where I feel we are today, because more people are being brave enough to speak out about what our city government is doing. You have now decided to punish us by cutting the number of minutes that one can speak from 5 to 3 minutes. You are also cutting down the total amount of minutes. Accumulatively, citizens can speak 30 to 20 minutes for each side of the issue. And if that's not enough, you are giving one person, the mayor, the power to determine who gets more time to speak. And I quote, "As presiding officer, the mayor has the discretion to allow a speaker more time or extend the overall time limit in an equitable manner." I ask, does giving one person the power over citizens sound familiar? I would venture to say we are on a slippery slope here. First, it starts with cutting the number of minutes citizens can speak and giving one person too much power. Next thing you know, no one will be allowed to speak unless the mayor gives them permission, or they just decide to do away with citizen comments altogether. Many Germans came to this country to get away from this type of government overreach, the type of overreach that has a grown man fearing speaking out to protect his own property because of the experience that this type of government power he has experienced. So for my father-in-law, Arnold Schrank, and anyone else afraid to speak out, I'm strongly speaking out for the citizens of New Braunfels to stop Ordinance 2023. I will venture to say that I'm going to say, like I say to my kids, just because everyone else is doing it doesn't mean we have to do it. Just because everyone else seems to be doing 3 minutes and cutting back on the time doesn't mean we have to. New Braunfels is a very special place. It's my birthplace. It's where I've spent a majority of my life, and my husband's family has. And so I feel like that I agree with part of this. We don't need to be giving people's addresses out here. We should do that private. I don't have a problem with people signing up, but I do have a problem when we start looking at squelching people's that are brave enough to come up here and do this. And I ask that y'all really, really consider what you're doing here tonight. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Anyone else?
My name is Joey Lynn Massaros. I live at 578 Avenue A. I'm the founder of freespeechdefender.com, so naturally, when free speech matters are on the table, it sparks my attention. I think that it's a good thing there was no limit on signing up for the group of residents that came to protest that triplex in their neighborhood. They might not have gotten their point across. I'm sure they appreciate their win, and I celebrate that with them. Also would have liked to have seen this gentleman say what he said in 3 minutes. I know that's a presentation, but I think that's a great idea, maybe to do that on another night so that the citizens aren't paying the price for, y'all's strenuous work hours. quite frankly, I don't care that other cities have 3-minute limits. I really just don't care about that. I think that there's a reason that New Braunfels is special, and a lot of people want to move here. And I think that we need to stay special. I don't think we need to be complying with what everybody else is doing just because that's what they're doing. I hear this gentleman speak about a learning curve or a grace period to be determined. I just can't help but think that there would be no end to that grace period with the amount of people that are moving to our city and the rate at which it's growing and the nature of which people randomly attend city council meetings. The format and structure proposed to create efficiency is clearly designed, in my opinion, to discourage input from citizens. It simply does not work that there would be a cutoff. As most people show up to participate in a meeting at the time the meeting is starting or do their best to get here when they get off of work. You know, I hear you guys saying that there may or may not be a guarantee that people speak. I can't agree with that. I can't agree that that would be right. I hear y'all saying this gives you guys flexibility, but just to be clear, it does not give the citizens flexibility. I do want this town to remain fair and free, not just for me and my friends and my generation, but mostly for my son and his children's generation. I imagine that they would live in our 102-year-old home on Avenue A and renovate it, and they would enjoy the things about this town that we love. And I hope that that would be being able to speak up at city council meetings for 5 minutes if they so choose. At the rate that y'all are reducing the time based on what other cities are doing, by the time my son is an adult or his children are adults, they'll have 0 minutes to speak. The people elect you guys to be their voice and to hear our voices, not to minimize it. I do understand that your time is valuable. I have a son at home that I homeschool, and I didn't get to eat dinner with him tonight. And our other car has a flat tire, so my husband couldn't go get dinner, and they were stuck with beef jerky and cashews. I understand that it's inconvenient to be here late when the time goes over. I'm living it with you guys right here because we were the last item on the agenda. And I thank y'all for making the commitment to being elected and sacrificing your personal time for this role. But that doesn't mean that the people's voices should be minimized. Perhaps there are other areas you guys can create new efficiencies in without the people who elected you and whom you serve paying the price. I appreciate that your gears are already turning. Is it not our very voices you come here to hear and to help, to represent? Isn't that what you guys said mattered when you wanted our vote? Or has it become that your own agenda is more important and we've become an inconvenience to you? Historically, isn't it by the government first limiting people's freedoms of speech, where people can no longer effectively speak up, that what follows is we've seen the downfall of those countries subjected to dictatorships and tyranny? Why would we follow in that path, rather the path our forefathers founded our nation on, making freedom of speech and a right to petition the government for redress of grievances the first and most important amendment, something the founder of our town, Prince Psalms, held in high regard, completely relocating and settling his people here, risking life and everything for free opportunity? Do we not already have enough censorship on social media and in society that we must also have it in our city's affairs as well? Especially as our city grows at an alarming rate, perhaps now would be the time to hear more from the citizens and not less. In the spirit of Galatians 5, Christ has set us free to live a free life. So take a stand. Never again let anyone put a harness of slavery on you. It is absolutely clear that God has called you to live a free life. Just make sure that you don't use those freedoms as an excuse to do whatever you want to do while you accidentally destroy your freedom. Rather, use your freedom to save one another in love. That's how freedom grows. I implore you to leave the time a citizen may speak at 5 minutes. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else like to speak?
Before you start my time, can you zoom in where it actually is the corners of the thing there? Public speaking is my biggest fear. I don't come here and do it because I enjoy being heard. I fumble around a lot, and I really appreciate everybody who's able to come and conquer their fears too. There's also a lot of people that are too scared to speak at city council meetings, and that's a little concerning for me.
Make sure you give your name and address, please.
Susie Pratt, Evergreen Estates. This is a portion of a message from a councilman on the I'll leave unnamed, made ironically during citizens' comment when we were talking about MBU, and more specifically, when William Edge was addressing council. Kind of speaks to how citizens' comment is regarded. How I like to complain rather than offer some solutions. Here are some solutions I'm happy to share with you. Record and live stream all public meetings. You govern in a city of over 100,000 people, and hardly any of them understand how all of this works. Show them. There seems to be a misconception about the other cities' council sign-up sheets. I've attended these meetings. These work as a way for people to give council the name and information of people who spoke so they can be followed up with later. It works like a cue to get rid of those awkward silences between speakers, and many city councils allow you to sign in on a sheet of paper while citizens are speaking. It's typically on the corner of an easily accessible table like that one there. This allows people who had questions raised during an item to ask a question. That was like my very first city council meeting. I wasn't planning on speaking, I wasn't planning on saying anything, but I heard a presentation and it raised a lot more questions than it had answers for me. So I asked those questions and they were answered for me. You have highly skilled and passionate professionals living in New Braunfels. When they offer you their time and their advice for free, take them up on it. If they present a problem, make them feel heard. Ask for their solution. 9 times out of 10, they'll have some ideas. These people are also more likely to present factual studies and evidence for their points if they are allowed a presentation tool like a PowerPoint, just like the presenters. If an old man like Jim Holster tells you your methods are outdated, believe them. Love you, Jim. I've offered to live stream and record these little ancillary meetings for free, and I have been turned down repeatedly. I continue to do it because I think people need to be informed and they need to learn about how their cities work. Cut down on the number of items on the agenda. Limit presentation times. Put agendas out a week in advance. I, for one, have to spend a large amount of time researching each of these items before they are presented on Mondays, and it takes time, I'm sure, for you. With the number of agenda items, I'm either thinking council needs to be a salaried position for the sheer amount of hours spent on learning about these items, or there needs to be fewer items that are more thoroughly researched and given the time and appreciation and attention that they deserve. It was apparent that although we have committees for many of these items, they aren't well researched by council at times, which is evidenced by questions being asked that were already detailed by the committees, and items pulled off the consent agenda with questions that made it seem clear that councilmen were confused by what was being paid for or why. And that's okay. There's a lot of stuff on these consent agendas and the agendas, which is why I think there needs to be less stuff on them. Sorry. These rezonings are hardly an emergency. I have to wonder about the year-long process we had to go through to wait for a humane ordinance versus how quickly this item of citizens' comment was put on the agenda. You are elected to be representatives of the communities you live in. Taking away their voice, even though they may not be presently using it, is a bad look. Take it from a PR professional. It won't go well. Something I found interesting in my experience is that most people who complain bring solutions with them. All you have to do is ask. This is an affordable way of crowdsourcing ideas. However, when an individual or group of individuals feels that the audience, council, is going to disregard their thoughts anyways, they choose to present the issues to test you and save themselves your disdain on their ideas. When I ran for city council, I was keenly aware that these meetings last a long time. I looked forward to hearing from the diverse wealth of expertise and experiences from each community member. Your constituency is an untapped resource from which you can gain unique perspectives and unique solutions to issues that can make New Braunfels an exemplary thought leader for the rest of the state rather than a poor and outdated facsimile of larger communities. If your problem with these meetings is that citizens get to talk too long, you ran for the wrong reasons.
Ms. Pratt?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else like to speak to this item?
Cheryl Fuller, I live in Green. I have been to many city council meetings where the mayor just rushed people away. I have been shut down without ever being able to say a word as soon as I got up there. So I know that the mayor controls a lot of what happens. How are we going to be protected in this situation, you included, if we're not allowed to speak our 3 minutes or 5 minutes? As I said, I've been rushed away much too quickly before I even got to voice a thought. Additionally, I have been shut out of any meetings that affected me personally because your little people that are in charge of sending out notices never sent me anything. Things that affected me, like my property being zoned commercial without any notice, and I get a notice once it's been voted and approved 10 days after the meeting is held. So there's a lot of stuff that needs to be looked into, and I hope all of you give it a fair chance to let us speak, because I feel like we're not getting our voices heard. Just as Susie said, there's a lot of opportunities for y'all to pick up on what we're saying, that we provide valuable input into the way this community should be steered to provide an excellent living and working environment for all of us. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak to this item?
David Gonzalez, I live in Oak Creek Estates. I have more questions really than comment, but I do have a couple of comments. I don't know if they can answer questions as I speak here, but one of them is, what if there are more speakers than are available, the allotted time is available for? And then what's the criteria that the mayor has to actually assert the discretion he has for increasing the time? Is there, at his own whim, can he just decide that? And how far in advance do we have to fill out the form? We don't even have an answer to that tonight. It's very questionable as to when that needs to be filled out. Not only that, but what if an item is on the agenda, on the consent agenda, that somebody here wants to pull out to have considered for public opinion and comment? How would that work on the form? I don't know if we talked about that. Also, I think somebody else said this, limiting the number of items on the agenda. I mean, that would actually put focus more on the council and what we're talking about than to have an item O, I believe was what Councilman Hurtis said, that we've had items all the way down to O through the alphabet. That's kind of crazy, I think. Now, I would love to have seen how this form worked a few months ago when we had MBU sitting here with 200 or 300 people in this room and the other room over there. I would love to have seen how that worked. But that's just kind of my thoughts, my questions. Again, I don't know if I said the questions too quickly or not, but that's just what I oppose the decrease in time. I appreciate Councilman Spradley's time to keep it at 30 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever, but I still think we should have more time to speak. It's worked since we've been doing it here. I hate to go down a rabbit hole of the other cities that are around the state going and limiting the speech of their citizens as well. I wouldn't want New Braunfels to do that. So that's just my thought. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Genova, 544 Granada Drive. I am primarily an online watcher. This is only my second in-person council meeting. And it was kind of ironic. I've had some dealings with 2 different city departments in the last 2 weeks that were not good, and this came on the agenda, and I said I needed to go. I think there was great feedback given already. I want to reiterate that the job y'all do should be paid. I mean, for what you get compensated, you're volunteering, essentially. That pays for your gas to get here. You are appointed or elected to not only make large decisions in our community, but be the voices for the districts you serve. I myself, and I'm not throwing anybody under the bus, have had a hard time getting my council representative to reply. Our neighborhood has reached out on big issues that impact us. We're not crying for nothing. on big projects that impact our neighborhood. So sometimes council being here is the only way to do that. And by limiting who can speak, that doesn't always mean that new voices will be heard. Who said, keep the 30 minutes, but move it to 3, and more people get to speak? That was good. There was language, the one thing that I would like an answer to or to be addressed or thought about, neutral speakers. That caught my eye because I'll say I'm a neutral speaker in most everything in my life. The way the language is worded in the ordinance, section 239B1, neutral speakers take away the time from both other groups. Either, I don't know if they can have their own section. I don't know how many neutral speakers y'all get, but I think taking away from the other two groups is unfair, especially if it's somebody just with a comment or concern or not necessarily representing either party. The comment or suggestion about the online form and adding, hey, I'm not gonna be there, but I would like to leave feedback, I think that's great, because that was on my, can emails be included? This meeting with TxDOT tomorrow, one thing that sparked my interest is, I think it was 2 weeks, but it was February something on the notice that you are allowed to send in comment to have them recorded on the official meeting notice, minutes. I don't know, council's laws, if y'all are allowed to do that, but at least providing an opportunity on the online form for citizens to give feedback that would be recorded in minutes is a good option and a way for people to be heard. That is still citizen interaction, and would cut down on this for y'all as well. So what else? I think most of my other questions got answered. Yeah, so I think it's been good discussion. I think y'all's decision, I hope you hear what everybody has to say. This council is supposed to be a welcoming environment, and I think the intent is there because y'all allow public comment, period. But there are gonna be nights where fair yet hard conversations have to be had. And I think allowing people that space provides the transparency that the city is saying that they want to offer citizens. So that is all.
May I ask you a question right quick? You mentioned the meeting tomorrow with TxDOT. And I think you mentioned the fact that there was a date in there that you could submit. That all is going directly to TxDOT?
Oh, no, I was just using it as an example.
Oh, okay.
I don't know
I thought you were
if-
saying, okay.
No.
Gotcha.
More like if somebody rewatched the council meeting 5 days after it happened, if they were also allowed to email in comments or questions to have those recorded in the minutes of council meetings.
Robert, can we talk about that when we get through with their comments about, was that something that, was it Councilmember Campos mentioned about that emailing in?
Yeah,
And
or
getting
even
feed-
offering it with that form, and I'm assuming the form would go live as soon as the agenda is released. That way, everything can be linked together.
So we can talk about that in
Okay,
a second. I mean,
yes,
I
yeah.
like that idea too, but some folks are gonna have to watch the meeting first and then maybe have
Absolutely,
questions. So that would
yeah.
be after the fact. I don't know if that covers what you were talking about, Councilmember Campos, or not.
And it may work both ways.
I didn't have a fully fleshed out idea here. I was just thinking, I'm a big fan of feedback, and I just thought if we're going to allow people to fill out a form, people don't necessarily have to be here to talk, right? They could just say what they have to say, and, I mean, it might save us time because people just, they want to know, they want us to know that they're on a particular side of an issue, and maybe have a few comments, but don't necessarily want or need to speak for any time.
And as far as a vote on a particular item, then they would have already missed the vote because they wouldn't be
Yes, that
watching it
would,
until the
yeah.
next day. But again, they could certainly give their feedback, especially if it's a first reading of something,
Yes,
so. okay.
absolutely.
Understood, thank you. Huh? She's gonna let me know.
Ryan Garcia, New Braunfels District 4. Jotting down a few notes here, just kind of going over a few things, so sorry if my stuff is all over the place, but I do really like the idea of, like Mr. Herta was saying, about reducing the number of items for consideration. I know that's one of the key things that we can do to help reduce these meetings times. And I know your guys' times are valuable. When you're here, you're not with your families, you're not getting rests most of the time when we're here till 12 o'clock at night. So I definitely think we need to consider that as an option. And I don't know if there's anything preventing us from doing that within our charter at all. The second thing that I have a concern with is the information is online form. How is that information stored? What is the purpose of storing that information? Where is the information kept? And what is the security behind that? I just don't want my information just to be out there. The city has my information, they're storing it somewhere. I know other people feel the same way, where it's just like, okay, why do we need that information collected? Why can't we do it on a piece of paper where the city shreds it after that meeting night just to kind of basically have a roll of who to go through? Why does it need to be stored electronically? The third thing is, I know the goal here is obviously your guys' time is valuable, so we're trying to reduce the meeting times. So I'm looking at it right now, I'm like, okay, well, right now we're doing a total of 60 minutes for each item, 5 minutes max per citizen, so that's 12 citizens. You guys the proposal is to reduce it down to 40 minutes at 3 minutes per citizen. And I know you're trying to get more citizens to be able to voice their comments. Well, that only comes to 13.3 citizens. So that's only 1.3 additional citizens that can speak per item, which isn't a whole lot if the goal is to actually increase those who are actually able to participate. So I think if anything, a happy medium would be to keep it at the 60 minutes, but then maybe look at doing a 4-minute iteration instead of the 5, because you're looking at if you're going from 5 minutes down to 3 minutes, you're taking away 40% of our citizens' time. 40% where we no longer have that time available to voice what our concerns are. I've been up here doing presentations. You can't do a decent presentation in 3 minutes on what you're looking to voice. That's hard to do. And we're not getting extra time to do that. 4 or 5 minutes, it's doable. It's a quick presentation of what you want to present, a few slides, whatever it may be, but it is doable. So I definitely think we need to reconsider what we're going to be doing, how much time. But if we're looking at a 4-minute duration, that's just a 20% reduction. It gives all of us time to be home, more time with our families, easier to go home after these meetings, hopefully not be lasting so long. And it also gives them a good amount of time for citizens to be able to voice and concern. And you get a lot of citizens up in front of here with that 4-minute duration. So I just definitely think we kind of need to re-go to the drawing board on this one and not just make a quick jump on what we want to do. And again, we shouldn't just be doing, just because XYZ city does this, we shouldn't be doing that here. We should have our own culture in New Braunfels, what we believe in. And if we believe in our citizens, that's what we need to believe in. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Timothy Davis, 810 Holly Street. I started coming to these meetings and I learned to talk really fast. And so now I do these videos and I talk really fast and I see myself doing that. I'm like, what the heck? He's wound up. Well, I'm just talking fast because I feel like I can't get enough out in the time I have. I spoke when they have 2 minutes at the school board, and there's no way you can get a full thought and a full idea out. But I have like pages of ideas here. See, like tons of ideas. How to solve this problem without restricting the time limits of the people. I do think that in certain circumstances, like with the puppy mill thing, we had hundreds of people wanting to speak. Okay, that's a certain circumstance where you should be given the authority, sir, with the consent of the council, a majority consent, or maybe a supermajority consent, to do something to fix this. But cutting our time from 5 minutes, especially citizens' communications, it takes way longer than 5 minutes sometimes to deal with that. You don't get enough time to talk. Folks, there's not enough time to get a good congruent thought out sometimes for people. People are nervous, and that 5 minutes gives them, maybe they just want to speak for 2 minutes, but we've seen elderly people come up here and they can't speak fast enough, and they struggle to speak, and they need more time. And sir, with all due respect, you have not granted the time people needed sometimes. I'm sorry, it's against your agenda, it's what you want to do. You want to do what y'all are doing with the city that the people clearly don't want, and you don't want to hear us, so you want to limit that. That's all I see here. I don't see, and what I don't see was a legitimate justification for doing this. I heard a little bit about it, but I've heard this time and time again, we're doing things, oh, well, that's what the other city's doing. Well, Seguin wasn't doing it any different than us. And this has worked. This has worked for the people of New Braunfels. So quickly, there's lots of reasons to not do this. This should be tabled indefinitely. Talk with the citizens about this and come back with something that makes sense. No due respect, staff, thank you very much for working on this, but I can see, and I'd like to talk with you, Ms. Acevedo, about some legal ramifications that could happen, some situations I could show you. If this passes tonight, I need to speak with you, because there's plenty of things that could happen that would open our city up to a federal lawsuit. First Amendment is paramount, and people will be limited from speaking just because of this process that's added that's completely unnecessary. You're opening up the door also to complete a disaster if this data is breached. This is absurd, folks. I'm sorry. This is so ill-conceived at this point. And we're not even here with a full council to vote on this. Folks, we have got to come together and listen and work together as citizens better. Instead of this was intentionally, I absolutely believe this was intentionally pushed to the back of the thing so all this crowd would be gone. This happens all the time. This should be put to the front of the agenda, and that was a detriment to the people of this city. This is the stuff that happens all the time. You try to ban clapping, now you're trying to ban speech. This is absurd. We have got to do better than this. The people of this town deserve better. And one thing we can do is to pay every single one of y'all. Have a meeting every week. Like our county does this. Why can't we do this? We have the funds. We have the money. Remember all that money, that extra money we took? Okay? The 5.9%, there's a word for it, increase in taxes that y'all all unanimously voted for? Speaking of developers, you let the developers speak twice. You did it tonight. They get to speak for their item, and then they get to speak in favor of it. And we've seen that happen time and time again when the developer gets like 10, 20 minutes to make his spiel. And of course you go for it, because he's going to develop big, giant condos right in our own backyard. Illegally, by the way, 1,200. Y'all broke the law when you did that one. This is ridiculous. You're not listening to the people. You are not listening to the people. It is time. Please listen to the people. You've listened tonight. You made some great ideas, fantastic ideas. A lot of y'all collaborated with some fantastic ideas. I challenge y'all to come back and listen to this meeting tonight that we didn't even need to do. Talk about efficiency. We didn't even be here. We could all be home if we didn't do this. But there's plenty of ideas that can fix this without restricting our very limited already time to speak. Thank you very much.
Anyone else like to speak?
Mayor,
Yes.
the 30 minutes is up.
Okay, thank you. 30 minutes is up. 30 minutes is up.
The 30 minutes against is up.
Was there anyone that spoke during that time that didn't use all of their time? I didn't time each one. Okay, so we'll turn it into in favor of this item. Well, hand them to the,
Mayor, I don't mind him speaking.
It's up to the council, Mayor.
Can you just extend it to him?
okay. All right.
That's sort of the point. Very, very quickly, the 10-minute limit on presentation, I think is great. You ought to be able to get out your point in 10 minutes. Sometimes I see presentations, there's way too much stuff, and there's no point. 3 minutes on citizen communication, good. Make sure we all can communicate with citizen communication. There's no limit. Is there a time limit, a speaker limit? That was not talked about. Citizens communication, how long?
Well, that's, if it's an
That
issue
wasn't
that
it.
has
That
two
wasn't addressed. There was
sides.
no time limit mentioned on citizens communication, so happened 3 minutes, which I think
No,
is good.
there is a time limit, so that also had to be amended if there's going to be any changes, and it's the same as
That's
for
20
items
minutes
on
for
the,
citizens communication?
well, as written right now, it's 30 and 30, if there's two sides to it. It doesn't,
I'm talking about beginning citizen communication, not when we're doing pro and against. They're two sort of separate issues.
well, no, under citizens communication, sometimes we've seen a topic that's debated during citizens communication. There's people that speak for or against items. We had seen it with the the puppy land ordinance. We had seen it with a lot of different kind of hot topics come up in citizen comment, not on the agenda yet, and you have people speaking against it, and you have people speaking for it. So it does, that's also 30, assuming it's a debated topic, 30 per side. But otherwise, there's no,
Is there a time limit now on citizens communication?
30 minutes per
30 minutes for
side
citizens
if there are
communication total,
sides,
okay.
right.
So we're
Mr.
talking
Wonky.
about taking total citizens communication down to 20.
Clarification, are you talking about at the beginning of the meeting before anything?
Beginning of the meeting, not
Okay.
on a topic.
Right.
Yeah. And I've never seen that called for
No,
time.
there's nothing there
Yeah,
that
and
says
that
an
won't
hour,
change.
hour and a half.
Okay, good. I just
cut it
want to make
off.
sure.
No.
Second question, do we have Wi-Fi here? We can fill out forms on the computer? If not, we need to make sure we have that. Last thought, the registration I think is good, but I see Gail and the mayor now doing a whole lot more work, and a lot more work. And how much are you really gaining? The thing that worries me is picking and choosing who gets to speak, and that's a quagmire. And I suggest you go on this very slowly and start implementing as you go. Start doing the registration and trying to figure out how it works, because as soon as people feel that you're censoring them, it's going to blow up. But that's my thoughts. God bless you. Thank you.
It's past my bedtime, gentlemen. Mr. Mayor, council members.
Please state your name.
Let's talk about democracy. Let's talk about the threat to democracy. Ben Franklin, one of our founding fathers, following the adoption of our Constitution, stated, and I paraphrase, "We now have our democracy if we can keep it." And for 243 years, America has been striving to keep it. Now tonight, it is our turn to keep it. The First Amendment to that Constitution acknowledges the right of the people to petition the government for the redress of grievances. That freedom is expressed at every council meeting with its agenda item entitled Citizens' Comments. And now, council is seriously considering restricting that same freedom. Council's reasoning alleges that citizens' grievances are too time-consuming. Thus, council meetings are running too long. Is council not suggesting that all of the other agenda items, which already take up most of the majority of the time, are so much more important than citizens' grievances that must be reduced to a mere 3 minutes? Please, do not further restrict the time allowed for all citizens to come before you to air their grievances. Please, listen. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mayor, City Council, name is John Paul Williams, 2266 Normandy Grace in South Bank. People here pretty much said everything that I want to say, but I just want to reiterate, I think comparing yourselves to other cities and towns is not where I would like us to go. New Braunfels is its own place, it's special. I think that the idea of the forms, while it sounds good kind of because it makes things seem more efficient, I really think it's going to bog people down. I was pushing a wheelbarrow at 4:30, jumping in the shower, getting up here. I'm not going to get on the computer and fill out a form, and I'm not going to do a QR code. I don't know where that information's going. I just don't do it. I never do QR codes. I want a paper menu. And so I would really appreciate it if you guys would reconsider that. As far as the time speaking, I just don't think you should bring it down to 3 minutes. That's a really bad, it's going to be a bad look on you. I really feel like if you do this, there's going to be a very strong effort to make sure that that gets repealed. I don't know how citizen initiatives work here, but I think there's a strong enough beginning of the objection to this that it's going to grow in popularity and power, and people are going to start coming up here and having a time with it. The gentleman here just said it right. I mean, this is about speech. It's about redress. If I need to come up here and talk to you about something that really matters to me, I mean, 3 minutes is a beginning Toastmaster speech. This is something takes 3 minutes just to basically say who you are and kind of what you're doing here, but doesn't allow you to actually address the subjects that you want to talk about. 5 minutes, I think, is sufficient time. Most people probably don't take the full 5 minutes. Some people may try to take more than 5, but you got to cut off there. And I would just like to see you guys be a little more considerate to the citizens. I love your idea. Figure out some other way to find efficiencies with staff and with these presentations. The idea that a developer can get up twice in one evening doesn't make sense to me. And I've dealt with staff in another place for quite a long time, and I just don't think it makes sense. So I appreciate your time, and hopefully you guys will, go home and get some sleep, because it's past my bedtime as well. Thank you.
Jim Holster, somewhere in New Braunfels. I'm practicing the new approach. Now, I have a technical question and then some general. Probably for your IT guy and probably for Robert. So if I want to submit a file and it's a TikTok file, y'all gonna allow that?
Okay.
Let me tell you why I raised that question. I'll answer it for you now. The governor has